In the middle of summer, just when millions of tourists would normally be flocking to these places, only the wind and the sound of rusty roller shutters remain in some parts of the United States. Florida, Nevada, California. These are iconic tourist destinations in the United States. But now, they are laying off people en masse. The restaurant is closed, the event has been cancelled, and those who once lived by the dream of travel now don't know what they'll live on tomorrow. An industry that once brought in over $1.9 trillion annually is now on the brink of silent collapse. And no one warned us. Only when paychecks were cut, lunch was no longer provided, and the hotel was empty, did we realize something had been wrong for a very long time. Why were tens of thousands of people pushed onto the streets in the middle of the peak season? Why have states that were once iconic now become red zones of unemployment and despair? And if this trend continues, could your state be the next one? This video will take you to 10 states facing the largest wave of tourism layoffs in the United States. It's not just numbers, but the stories of each individual being swept away by the whirlwind. If you've ever been to these places or lived off tourism, you need to watch this video until the end. Do you remember the last time you brought your grandchildren to Florida? The laughter in the park? The bustling crowds waiting for the roller coaster? Now try to imagine that scene again, but with no one laughing, no one waiting, and the snack bar closed. Summer 2025. Over 15,000 Walt Disney World employees are facing the risk of reduced hours or complete layoffs. Right during the peak tourist season. Right in the entertainment paradise of America. And that's just the surface. The number of international visitors to Florida decreased by 38% in just 12 months. Hotels from Orlando to Miami are reporting booking rates down by as much as 27%, a figure experts are calling a post-pandemic crisis, but without a pandemic. The problem isn't just that customers aren't coming. Florida has become too reliant on international tourists from Europe and Latin America to Asia. As visas tighten and the global economy fluctuates, the flow of people and money stops. Plus, the cost of living in Florida has skyrocketed: lodging, food, parking. Everything makes domestic tourists feel like it's cheaper to go elsewhere. A stage technician at Disney World, he shared that he lost his job during the 2020 pandemic and thought this year would be a spectacular comeback. But no. Recently, an email from the HR department with no apology simply stated indefinite reduction in working hours. He said, "I used to bring magic to visitors. Now I can't afford the rent." If Florida loses another summer, tens of thousands of workers like Paul could leave the tourism industry for good, switching to delivery, driving, construction, maintenance, or simply not returning. At that point, the entertainment paradise will have no one to operate it, even if guests return. Florida was once a place where dreams came alive, where families reunited, and where children's hearts burst with joy upon meeting their favorite characters. Now it's like an abandoned park full of color, but silent. Have you ever been to Disney World with your family? If you could go back to today, what do you think your grandchildren would see? Is Florida still the American dream, or just a bill no one wants to pay? And if you think Florida is an exception, look at what's happening in Las Vegas, where thousands of casino employees are quietly leaving the spotlight. Las Vegas was once a place people went to seek their fortune. A city that never sleeps, where the lights never go out, and dreams seemed always ready to materialize after just one spin of a slot machine. But who would have thought that the city of miracles is now running out of magic? From March to June of this year, over 32,000 service workers in Nevada lost their jobs just in one quarter. This figure is equivalent to nearly 1/3 of the tourism industry's workforce in the state. The auditorium was completely empty, the restaurant was closed, and worse, as many as 8 hotels and casinos in Las Vegas were forced to temporarily close due to a lack of guests. The problem isn't with the lights, but seems to be with the wallet. Older tourists, once Vegas's main source of revenue, are significantly cutting back on spending. Partly due to rising prices, and partly due to the anxiety that travel no longer feels as safe as it used to. And as the Chinese tourist group, which once spent thousands of dollars a night, almost disappeared from the American travel map, Las Vegas suddenly found itself lost on its own stage. A woman who has been a room service manager at a 4-star hotel on the Strip for over 20 years, was just forced into early retirement. It's not because I want to rest, but because I have nothing left to do. She shared, "I used to think Vegas was where I'd work for the rest of my life. Now, I just hope I have enough money to pay the electricity bill each month." The glamour is still there, but when you step outside the Strip, you'll see that Las Vegas today is like Detroit in 2008. A facade of glamour in front with cracks growing deeper behind. The question is, if you were planning a vacation this year, would you still dare to book a ticket to Las Vegas? Next, we move to a state that is seeing a series of empty parks, beaches, and restaurants, despite once being a dream summer destination, California, where the golden dream is beginning to fade. Who would have thought that Hawaii, the symbol of a dream vacation once bustling with tourists from the US to Japan, would become a lonely paradise right in the middle of summer? At Honolulu Airport, there were times when crowds were packed together and luggage stretched all the way to the security gates. But in the summer of 2025, that scene was replaced by an unbelievable silence. The flight information boards are empty, as if reflecting something beyond the tourism industry are turning away. According to the latest statistics, 21% of hospitality workers in Hawaii have been laid off compared to last year, the highest number since the pandemic. From hotel staff and shuttle drivers to tour guides who once made a living from Japanese, Korean, and American tour groups visiting the island, everyone now has to struggle to make ends meet. A Japanese tour guide who has lived in Hawaii for 15 years said he lost up to 80% of his income in less than 6 months. He said, "I don't blame the tourists, but I'm starting to feel like I'm being pushed out of what was once my home." What happened in the end? Not only did airfare prices skyrocket after many airlines cut flights, but the policy restricting Airbnb and the regulations penalizing tourists deemed disrespectful of local culture have also led many people to choose different destinations. Some seemingly harmless behaviors, such as taking photos in sacred places or camping without permission, can also result in a fine of several $100s. Hawaii wants to protect its identity, but is this approach inadvertently causing the indigenous people themselves to suffer the consequences? On one side is the will to preserve nature and culture, and on the other is the survival needs of the tourism industry, which accounts for over 20% of the state's GDP. Without adjustments, Hawaii risks becoming a closed paradise where the beauty remains, but there's no one left to admire it, except in memory. A major question that many people are concerned about at the moment: can tourism be sustainable without losing the very people who depend on it? And do we, those who once dreamed of setting foot in Hawaii, still feel like we belong there? Let's move on to the next state, where once bustling casinos and resorts are now just dim lights and temporary closed signs. You won't believe it's Florida until you hear the stories about this state. If you ever thought of California as the real-life American dream with Santa Monica Beach year-round sunshine and sunsets that meet the sea, you might want to reconsider. But this time, let's take it slow and look closely. The hotels that were fully booked in the summer now only have a few flickering lights at night. On the sidewalks of Santa Monica, instead of the footsteps of tourists, there's the sound of homeless people's shopping carts as they wander in search of shelter. In the second quarter of 2025, Los Angeles County alone lost over 40,000 jobs in the service sector. It's not just a number. Those are closed kitchens, receptionists no longer working shifts, and dreams fading with each month's soaring rent. A small eatery owner located right on the beach used to serve both tourists and locals with life stories shared over every cup of morning coffee. But now she has to sell the shop. Why has a tourist paradise fallen into such a desolate state? Partly due to rising operating costs, and partly due to the not-so-positive image of security and the homelessness crisis being widely shared on social media. When tourists no longer feel safe, they choose other places, and when they leave, an entire service ecosystem is shaken. Hollywood may still be shining, but behind the scenes are closed kitchens, empty chairs, and silent people leaving the land they once called home. Is California paying the price for putting image before real life? If you have fond memories of California, do you think it still retains any of its charm? Please share below. And don't take your eyes off it. The next state will leave you speechless. How long has it been since you heard someone say, "I dream of going to Manhattan once in my life"? The saying once encapsulated the entire American dream, a place where Broadway lights shine brighter than the stars, where every street corner is a movie set, and even the smallest coffee shop can make you the main character. But now those dreams are fading behind layers of dust and the sounds of delivery trucks. Tourism, once considered the lifeblood of New York, seems to be growing weaker. According to a report from NYC, tourism ticket sales for Broadway performances have dropped by as much as 35% compared to 2019. A figure that is not just dry data, but the sound of silence among empty rows of seats. 17% of hotels in Manhattan have been forced to close, not due to a lack of staff, but because there are too many rooms. Total revenue in the tourism sector decreased by over 26%, equivalent to billions of dollars no longer flowing into the economy, and thousands of jobs quietly disappearing. A street saxophone player who used to perform every night in Union Square is now delivering food orders for a delivery app. He shared, "There aren't as many tourists as there used to be. They hesitated, they went elsewhere. Now I'm playing the trumpet for myself." This artist's story is not uncommon. It's playing out on every subway step, every small stage, every street-side eatery that thrives on the influx of people from all over the world. What surprises people is that even though people still come, New York is no longer a place where people want to live, but only a place they need to pass through. That difference was enough to trigger a chain of consequences, from souvenir shops to luxury restaurants. And the most heartbreaking part, no one screamed. It happened quietly, like the sound of a sad piano falling silent on a deserted evening in Central Park. Perhaps after the pandemic, after inflation, after global turmoil, New York is no longer the symbol the world looks up to, but rather a wake-up call for America itself, about preserving the values that once made up the American dream. And if even Manhattan can't maintain its aura, what will be left of the next state on our list? In the next part, join us as we visit the state known as a sea paradise, but is gradually fading into oblivion. The sound of waves crashing on the beach has now become a wave of unemployment within the state. Can you guess which state it is? Don't take your eyes off it. When people think of South Carolina, many will imagine Myrtle Beach, which was once as vibrant as a summer postcard. But now the benches along the beach are covered in dust. The hotel's glass door was streaked with sea salt, and inside was a yellowed, hastily made hiring sign. Yes, the staffing shortage is no longer just an operational issue. It's a sign that a struggling tourism industry is in decline. The unemployment rate in the restaurant and hotel sector in South Carolina has exceeded 10%, the highest in the southeastern United States. A figure that seemed to only appear during the pandemic, but this year there are no lockdowns, no curfews. Only the buses no longer arrive. What do you think is the cause? Perhaps part of this comes from the loss of Canadian tourists, who are an annual lifeline for the southeast coast when peak season arrives. But in 2025, Canada cut its budget for supporting American tourism while boosting domestic promotion and prioritizing other destinations. Results: many resorts in Myrtle Beach were unable to survive as bookings decreased by up to 38% compared to the same period last year. And the problem isn't just with tourists. The state budget is also being tightened. Previous iconic tourism campaigns are now just memories. South Carolina once called itself the summer door of America, but now that door creaks because no one bothers to open it. Ironically, places that once didn't have enough rooms to book now don't have enough people to operate. A coastal hotel had to close 2 floors simply because they couldn't afford to hire housekeeping staff. The sea is still beautiful, but beautiful for whom? A manager sighed, looking out at the empty rows of seats under the golden sun. South Carolina is entering a strange state. The sea is beautiful, but people's hearts are empty. What about the states that aren't famous for tourism? Can they avoid this spreading wave of layoffs, or are they in fact sinking faster themselves? Let's move on to the next state, where unemployment arrives, even before the tourist season begins. There was a time when just mentioning Chicago immediately brought to mind its vibrancy, the skyline rising above Lake Michigan, world-class conferences at McCormick Place, and the bustling crowds flocking to Navy Pier every summer. But what about now? The exhibition hall was completely empty. The hotel lights went out early, and for lease signs quietly appeared along the central streets. A figure that would bring tears to the eyes of anyone who has ever loved Chicago. Over 20,000 people in the event, meeting and exhibition industry in the state of Illinois have been laid off in the past 12 months alone. It's not because they did anything wrong, but because customers stopped coming. Every conference contract was cancelled. Groups of international tourists were redirected, and every urban dream was postponed indefinitely. Many tourists now call Chicago the city of anxiety, a place where they're unsure if stepping out of their hotel is a wise decision. Crime rates are increasing, and interactions are occurring, even in areas once considered safe. For event companies, this is not just a risk, but a barrier to survival. There's an unforgettable image in the hearts of every resident here. Chicago was once America's grand stage, but now it's an empty stage with the backstage crew unemployed. And no one knows when the next act will take place, or if there will even be a next act. So the question is, are we witnessing a temporary lull, or the end of an era of American-style urbanism? And if even a city as culturally rich as Chicago can't keep visitors, where will other cities end up? Let's move on to the next name on this list, where the desert can't save the tourism industry that's slowly drying up. Once dubbed the winter paradise for older Americans, Arizona, with its warm, sunny skies, dry air, and expensive resorts, used to be fully booked from November to March. But this year, the desert has been quieter than ever. In the first 6 months of this year alone, the number of leisure travelers to Phoenix and Tucson decreased by as much as 31% compared to last year. Resorts that were once bustling are now sparsely overgrown with grass around the pools, and sun lounges are stacked up without anyone reclining on them. A retired couple living in Sedona, who used to rent out their ground floor apartment as an Airbnb for extra income during peak season. Last year they were fully booked for 5 months straight. And this year they just got 4 nights were booked by mid-season. The wife expressed, "We started cutting back on air conditioning at noon to save electricity, and we also reduced our weekly food rations." If the desert was once a place of escape from the northern cold, it is now a symbol of the emptiness of booking calendars, of faith in stable income, and even of retirement plans built over decades. If this trend continues into next year, Arizona could lose over 17,000 direct jobs in the hospitality and tourism industry, according to an analysis by the local tourism council. Towns like Lake Havasu, Scottsdale, or Mesa, which rely on the influx of snowbirds, are starting to see restaurants shorten their hours or put up for sale signs. Is the long-term vacation model, with rising costs for accommodation, fuel and services, becoming outdated in an era of instability? Are older Americans gradually moving towards staying home, living simply and being less idealistic? But that wasn't the only quiet place. Let's move on to the next state. Once a national destination for the entire world, now facing the largest wave of tourism layoffs on the East Coast. Once a magnet attracting millions of visitors with its snow-capped peaks, lush pine forests and breathtaking trails, Colorado now faces an unbelievable truth. The number of tourists has decreased by over 28% in just 1 year. Tourist towns like Aspen, which used to be fully booked in both winter and summer, now have hotels closing early due to a lack of guests. A town that once thrived on mountain climbers now struggles to survive with a reduced budget and cafes closing 4 hours earlier. According to the Colorado Tourism Office, if this trend continues until 2026, over 21,000 service industry jobs, from guides and chefs to rental car employees, are at risk of disappearing. In a local economy that relies on tourism for 1/5 of its income, that number isn't just about job losses. It's about an entire community potentially falling into an endless winter. If Colorado was once likened to the heart of the American high plains, that heart is now beating slower, not because of winter, but because faith in the return of tourists is cooling. And there's something even sadder. The very people who once flocked here to escape the city, find peace, and connect with nature are now the first to leave as shops close, rents skyrocket, and jobs shrink. Even the majestic mountains couldn't hold them back. Do you think this decline is only temporary, or is it a warning sign for an economic model that is too dependent on out-of-state visitors? And will these small tourist towns, once hidden gems of America, retain their soul when the crowds stop visiting? The final stop on this journey is Louisiana, where jazz music is no longer heard. If you've ever strolled down Bourbon Street, you'll surely remember the jazz trumpets from the second-floor balconies, the aroma of gumbo mingling in the air, and the people who never stop dancing rain or shine. But now, amidst the southern heat and the fading lights, New Orleans is no longer as vibrant as it once was. The music still echoed, but it felt more lonely than ever. Louisiana is currently experiencing a 23% decrease in tourism compared to the same period last year. Specifically, international flights to Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport have decreased by nearly half compared to pre-pandemic levels. And it's not just a number, it's thousands of tour guides, hotel staff, and street performers struggling to make ends meet on their meager salaries. Those who once entrusted their lives to the smiles of tourists now live in anxiety and uncertainty. Notably, many live bands, cultural icons of the city, are having to switch to live streaming on TikTok to make a living. From the glittering stages of the French Quarter, they now sit behind phone screens playing music for listeners thousands of miles away, not knowing if anyone is truly listening anymore. New Orleans is not just a destination, but a vibrant cultural experience. But when that experience loses its witness, does it still retain its soul? And then we ask ourselves, is tourism just an economic sector? Or is it also a breath of life connected to identity and beliefs? If the sad music of New Orleans is an omen, how many other cities are slowly falling silent? Tourism is not just about rest and recreation. It is the beating heart of communities that thrive on every visitor, every room booked, every map opened. When that heart stops beating, not only does revenue disappear, but so do memories, culture, and simple dreams. From the dazzling boulevards of Las Vegas to the quiet street corners of New Orleans, we are witnessing a silent exodus from the industry that once brought pride to America. The layoff numbers, the felice signs, and the disoriented eyes are a clear wake-up call that this crisis is no longer a prediction, but is happening right now. Are we on the brink of the gradual disintegration of the American travel dream? And if so, who will be left with enough faith to keep dreaming? Which state have you been to in this video? And in the past 5 years, what do you feel has changed most noticeably when traveling in the US? Please share your perspective in the comments section below, where your voice can inspire, warn, or open up new possibilities for others. If this video makes you think or touches on something the mainstream media doesn't say, please share it with your family or friends. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next insightful analysis where we'll explore the underlying movements reshaping America together. This video is analytical and reflective based on publicly available data and a social perspective. It is not intended to incite, politicize, or distort any individual or organization. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. See you on our next adventures, where the truth always lies hidden behind the familiar.